All right, TOEFL speaking question 4. Some people feel like this is the toughest question. Let's talk about it together. And let me jump way ahead and just give you a template right off the bat, because some people, they just want a template. They just want to know how to structure their response. So there it is. But if you stick around, you're going to learn a lot. We're going to do a lot together. And so I'm going to give you a lot of tips and tricks and strategies and templates and all that good stuff. But keep in mind that your most important goal is to sound comfortable, natural, confident. A lot of times when people do these videos and they learn a lot of information and you're pretty excited and there's a lot to think about, and sometimes that makes you pretty confused. Like, you can't give a good response because there's too many other things in your head. So just take a couple of these tips and tricks, practice a couple of them, take it slow. Remember, your goal is to sound comfortable and natural, so that's the most important thing. That's why this video is so long, is because I just want to give you pretty much everything I know about this question, and then you can take what you want and you can use what you want. All right, so let's get into it. TOEFL speaking question 4. By the end of this, you're going to know how the question looks, how to give a high-scoring response, how to use a template and other important vocabulary, and also how to grade your response with certain technology that I'll show you at the end. All this information is in the free guide, so check it out, 26 Plus. There is a link in the description below, and you can get all this information on a PDF, so you can have it handy anytime. So check that out. So let's talk about the question, introduction and walkthrough. So this is the last question in the TOEFL speaking. You will be done with the TOEFL speaking after this. You will listen to a lecture about a topic. That's the first thing you'll do. There's no reading for this one. That's the difference between question 3 and question 4. Question 3, there's a reading and listening passage. Question 4, there's only a listening passage. And it'll look like this. It'll say directions. You will now listen to part of a lecture. You'll then be asked a question about it. After you hear the question, you have 20 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak, and then it'll start playing. After the lecture finishes, you have 20 seconds to prepare, as I mentioned, and then you have a question here. So the question format, pretty much the same as question 3. Using the examples from the lecture, explain the concept of, and maybe swarm intelligence, maybe aggression is the one that we're going to talk about today. So whatever the topic is will be there, but the format is pretty much the same. And then you have to speak for 60 seconds. And it's hard to speak for exactly 60 seconds, and that's what we're going to talk about more right now. Some common topics are biology, psychology, business, history, and art. There's no way to predict the topic you'll get on test day. A lot of times it's biology, a lot of the time. All right, so let's talk about how to answer this question. Let's talk about templates. For this question, like question 3, I want you to think like a teacher. So I want you to get your teacher voice. Now, what's your teacher voice? Well, that's the voice that you are used to hearing me speak in. It's the kind of musical voice that goes up and down. I try to have a little bit of a softer tone when I'm speaking. I want you to listen and I want you to understand what I'm saying. But I don't talk this way when I talk to my friends. I don't talk this way when I talk to my family. I don't talk this way, on the street every day. I don't think. So anyway, when you talk like a teacher, you want somebody to listen, you want somebody to understand. So you want to keep that in mind. You're not going to talk like you're in a business meeting where you need to go fast, 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 fast. You want to explain the concept, explain the topic, take your time, think like a teacher. Imagine that the person listening doesn't know about the topic and you're trying to teach about it. Starting is the hardest part. We have to speak for 60 seconds. There's a timer. It says 3, 2, 1, speak. And then you have to speak, and that's really uncomfortable, awkward. Let's start with the introduction. Start strong. A couple different ways you can start. The professor goes into a ton of detail about topic, aggression, and then you describe it. The reason why we use these phrases, they help you start strong, and also you can use some phrases. For example, in the lecture, instead of just saying the professor says, you say in the lecture. That's a phrase that you're bringing together. Or a ton of detail. A ton of detail is a phrase that you have to say together. A ton of detail. You have to bring these together. But if I just say says, that's just one word by itself. That's it. But if I say a ton of detail, that's a phrase. I have to bring words together. So phrases help your score. You don't want to go crazy, you don't want to say phrases the whole time, but you do want to think about some ways of improving your score, and one way is by using some of these useful phrases. But let's just read the question. It says, using the points and examples from the talk, explain the two main theories as to why aggression exists. So this is about the theories why aggression exists. So here's the listening passage. It's a lot of information. We'll talk more about this a little later, but I just want you to see it here. You can pause the video and read it if you'd like, but you don't have to do that. And I start off by saying the professor goes into a ton of detail about human aggression, which is behavior that causes a person to experience psychological or physical harm. So how did I start? I introduced the topic and I elaborated on it. I described it, I defined it. It's about human aggression, which is behavior that causes a person to experience psychological or physical harm. And then I go on. After introducing the topic, the lecturer describes two theories about why aggression exists. That's the question, right? Look at the question on top. It says, using points and examples from the talk, explain two main theories as to why aggression exists. So not just about aggression, but why it exists. So the way that this lecture is set up is that they introduce a topic, they describe the topic, and then they'll have two examples or two, in this case, characteristics or theories, or 2 points or 2 reasons, 2 something to talk about the topic. Just like question 3, except only now it's all in one lecture. Instead of a reading passage and a listening, now it's only a listening, and they introduce the topic and then 2 reasons, 2 causes, 2 characteristics, 2 theories, 2 examples of the topic. All right, so after introducing the topic, the lecturer mentions that. In the lecture, the professor describes or discusses. First, the professor talks about any of these are okay. Pick the one that works best for you. I give you all these ideas because you might have some trouble with the pronunciation of some of these words. For example, some people might have trouble with lecturer. Lecturer is a hard word to say. There's a lot of R's there. So you might just want to say teacher or professor. So that's what you want to do second. You want to introduce the first example or point and provide details about it. After introducing the topic, the lecturer describes 2 theories about why aggression exists. The first theory is that aggression is a product of evolution. In the past, life was much more dangerous than it is today. And so, males would act aggressively in order to show that they can protect their mates and offspring. Women gravitated towards more aggressive men and passed on this trait through their genes. Okay, so I'm explaining what I heard in the passage. All this is from the passage. Now, I have to talk about the second example, and that's what this part is here. So here are some phrases to move to the second example. He goes on to say, or she goes on to say. Secondly, the professor describes, or the professor provides another example of why aggression exists by discussing. And then the second example. She goes on to say that another popular theory on aggression is known as the social learning theory, which proposes that aggression is a learned behavior. For example, children who observe a lot of violence at home or through movies and video games are more likely to demonstrate aggressive behavior towards others. So then I introduce the second example and give details about it. This last part, the conclusion, is optional. Just like all the question types in TOEFL, if you watch the other ones, you've heard me say this already. But yeah, the conclusion is optional. You can use any of these phrases. It's up to you. Your conclusion is an extra 5 seconds in your pocket. If you need it, use it. If you have like 50 seconds and you still have 10 seconds, you're like, okay, I'll say a conclusion. Or 55 seconds and you have 5 seconds. But for the most part, you could just speak and not have a conclusion. It's totally fine. And again, the reason is because you're not saying anything new. You're repeating information that you already said. So after hearing this lecture, I now have a better understanding of human aggression and why it exists. But it can also, help your word count a little bit. Word count is important. So that's another reason to maybe boost it up a little bit. You can add a conclusion. All right. So this is everything I just talked about, all laid out. You could take a screenshot of this here. This is your possible template, and just pick a few things that you like here that you can feel like you use on test day. All right. So now, this is the template that I'll just give to you. Some people, they're like, look, Josh, I just want you to tell me what to say. I don't care what it says. Just tell me what to say. Here it is. This is what you can say. Here's your template. Okay, if you don't feel like picking it yourself. People struggle with taking notes, so let's talk about it. Before I do, I want to shout out 2 products. The first thing is the TOEFL Speaking Study Plan. This is from Speaker English. This is my site. This study plan is not for everybody. This is for people who have taken the TOEFL before and got a 20 to 22, 23, 24 on TOEFL speaking and need to get a 26 or higher. If that's you, there's a study plan that's designed to improve your score in 30 days. You have something to do every day, takes about 20 minutes a day, and at the end of the 30 days, it's guaranteed to improve your score. So check out the study plan at Speaker English. So that's my own personal site. But then there's also the Emergency Course Premium Package from TST Prep. This is ideal for most students, I think. It comes with a study plan. 2 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, or 1 month. And all you have to do is follow the plan. And everything is laid out for you. All the practice tests are there. There's about 6 practice tests. All the videos includes just the best tips and tricks and strategies. I mean, everything that you need so you don't waste any time and you know exactly what you need to do every day before you take the test. Check it out at tstprep.com. Well, actually, don't check it out at TST Prep. Go to the link in the description because this offer is only for the YouTube audience. So it's usually $97, but $67 for the YouTube audience. So go to the link in the description because that's where you'll get this discount. Okay, if you have about a month to prepare or less, do this. It'll save you a lot of time, a lot of headaches. You'll know exactly what you need to do. Okay, now let's get back to taking notes. So if you remember, you listen to a lecture and then you have to speak about it. Of course, you can't listen and speak at the same time, so you have to remember what you heard. Now, how do you remember what you heard? Well, keep in mind that some people don't take notes at all, and that's fine. There are some people who don't take notes and they score very well. They just listen, focus on what they're listening, and they just listen. You know, it's about 2 minutes long, the listening passage, 90 seconds, 2 minutes. And they're like, okay. And maybe they'll write down a couple notes after they listen and then speak. That's totally fine. Some people feel like they can't write down and listen at the same time. They're just not used to it. It's not comfortable. When you're writing, you're not listening. So if that's you, it's something you might have to practice, but for the most part, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. If you do decide to take notes, or even if you're not going to take notes and you're just listening, these are your 4 goals. You want to identify the topic, define the topic. So it's going to be, remember that I want you to think like a teacher. And if you're a teacher, you're talking about something new. If you're talking about something new, you have to say what it is. So we're going to talk about aggression. Define it. Aggression is when you hurt other people or yourself, psychological or physical harm. And then you have to give 2 examples of it. Now this is about why aggression exists. One theory about why aggression exists is this. Another theory about why aggression exists is this. So this is what you're trying to listen for. The topic, the definition, the 2 examples. All right, so you have your goals. It does not matter if you know about the topic. Everything you need will be in the passage. Some people, they hear a topic and they freak out. They're like, I have no idea what that is. I've never heard of that before. Everything you need to answer the question is in the passage. This is an English test, not a content test. It's not about if you know about some biology or anything like that. It's an English test. Everything you need will be there. Just listen carefully. Focus on what you know. This is how your notes could look. You're not going to write down all this, but you're listening for the topic, definition, example 1, example 2. So that's what your notes should look like. This is the transcript, and I'll show you a little bit about how I took notes here. So where it says T, topic, I wrote human aggression. Today we're going to talk about human aggression. Okay, that was easy. They just introduced the topic right in the beginning. They don't always do that, but sometimes they do. And then the definition, aggression is considered any negative or harmful behavior that causes psychological or physical harm. So I wrote negative behavior, psych, physical harm. All right. And the theory, and I also highlighted 2 main theories as to why aggression exists. So why exists question. So that's the topic. It's not just aggression, but why it exists, right? The second paragraph, it says, aggression is a product of evolution, the part underlined in green. I wrote that down because evolution. And now the part highlighted in red, lots of words. So I'm going to try to just write down the most important information. Men felt the need to act aggressive in order to both protect their mate and perpetuate their genes. Females tended to gravitate towards males they felt could keep them and their eventual offspring safe. So I wrote down Danger in the past, men protect mate and offspring. Attract women, women want safety. Okay, so I just wrote that down. Again, you don't have to write anything down. If it's too hard for you, don't worry about it. Right? But that's just an example. And then it goes to the next part of the lecture, and the part highlighted in green, social learning theory, which takes the stance that aggression is something human beings learn to do, not something innate or instinctual. So I wrote social learning theory. And then children who observe violence at home are more likely to exhibit violent behavior. And I wrote learn from social environments and violence at home and movies and video games. So I have my notes. Remember, notes are not as important as comprehension. Understand first, write second. I can't say this enough. Understand first, write second. Okay, but here are my notes, and now I'm ready to speak. And to be honest, when I'm speaking, I'm not really reading my notes. I'm just speaking from what I remember, and I'll look at my notes to see like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, the first example. And what was the second? Oh yeah, second example, social learning theory. So it's going to be hard to remember all this stuff when you're speaking. So your notes are there to kind of trigger your memory. So you don't have to, this is a lot of notes. You don't have to write this many notes. You can write probably like 50% of this and be totally fine. Okay, so these are a lot of notes. Don't have to do that much. All right, and then the question comes up and it's time to speak. And I give a beautiful response based on my notes and everything that you've learned. So after you have your beautiful response, you might wonder, well, how beautiful is it? So let's talk about self-grading really quickly. And of course at TST Prep, we have teachers that do a speaking evaluation, but it can be expensive and some people can't afford it. So let me show you some different things you can do at home. My Speaking Score, link in the description for the TST Prep audience. This is a website that uses the same technology as TOEFL, as ETS. It's called SpeechRadar, and it gives you a speaking score. This will give you a very accurate score on your speaking, similar to what you'll probably get on test day. It'll also tell you your strengths and weaknesses and what you need to do to improve. I really like this site. I highly recommend it. My Speaking Score, it's very reliable. Another site that's free, actually, you can record 30 minutes of speaking for free, is Elsa Speech Analyzer. Again, I'll put a link in the description. You can speak for up to 30 minutes for free. I recommend doing a TOEFL speaking practice, 1 minute, and uploading your response here and seeing what the results are. The results are not the same as TOEFL. They don't grade you the same way as TOEFL, but it gives you a lot of good information that does matter for TOEFL. For example, your word count, or your pronunciation, or your rhythm. So these are important things. Elsa gives you feedback on it. Check it out. So the reason why it's important to use some of these tools, and I'm going to show you one more thing to do, is because if you go to ETS, the company that makes the TOEFL, and you ask, how am I graded on my TOEFL speaking? How do I judge my speaking score? It'll give you this template, this rubric. You're graded on your description, the general description. You're grading on delivery, language use and topic development, and it's all pretty general and vague. You really won't know what you have to do to get better. Another thing you can do is this checklist. So these are 9 questions that you can use and answer these questions after you record your voice. So do a TOEFL speaking question 4 and ask yourself these questions, and you'll be able to see some things that you need to do better for question 4. By the way, this checklist is something I made, and it's in the TOEFL Speaking 26 guide. So don't forget to download that in the description. All this information is there, and you have made it to the end. We have made it to the end. A lot of work went into these videos, so I hope you found them helpful. This is the guide to TOEFL speaking. And if you need more help, check out tstprep.com. We have teachers, we have courses, we have classes, we have so many different things, everything for your TOEFL needs. Check us out. And that's it. If you're ready to do a practice, check out this video here, TOEFL speaking practice. You can actually practice some of these questions now that you know so much about question 4. You're an expert. But that's it. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.